What to buy next for the Soul Wars factions? Well, Wave 4 is here for the Age of Sigmar 2018 2.0 release. And this week we've got the Aventus Firestrike, the long-awaited Black Coach, and Chainrasp Hordes, of course, for the Night Haunts, and then the Sequitors for Stormcast. Now, two of these are definitely probably must-haves, depending on which faction you're playing, Stormcast or Night Haunts. The other two, I don't know. I mean, they're cool kits, and Chainrasp, you know, you might need these for sure, but a lot of people have been weighing in on the whole Chainrasp issue out there. But either way, we're going to break them all down and actually put the Black Coach together itself, because that model's been around for 20 years. It's obviously come a long ways, and I can't wait to get down on the tabletop. It actually comes on a Night Titan base, believe it or not. So that's going to be really neat to get that put together and kind of show that to you guys, like how far Games Workshop has really come since the late 90s, which is pretty incredible. So let's start off. Well, first off, the Black Coach and the Aventus Firestrike are both $115 each. The Sequitors are a $60 box for 10 miniatures. And the Chainrasp Hordes ETB, the same exact model. So actually you get two of these in the Soul Wars box. These are $40 a box right here. First out the chute is the Sequitors. Now this, like I said, is a $60 box set. It's a little bit different than what you're going to get in the Soul Wars box itself. There's 10 models in here. They're all multi-part, whereas the other ones in the Soul Wars are more of an ETB kind of fit. You do get four of the great hammers. Well, you get all the options in here. So there's 10 models, so you're going to get 4 great hammers. You also get enough great hammers in the Soul Wars box. In here, you get the Redemption Cache and some different, you know, some lady poses here, I guess. And, you know, just some alternate kind of looks. So I mean, if you're on a budget, definitely stick with the Soul Wars box. But if you want, you know, some doper looking miniatures, so I would definitely go with these multi-part models here. Now, another good thing about this kit is that it is going to give you all the poses here that you're going to need. So, like if you want to go with the Maul and the Soul Shield, or the Blade and the Soul Shield, and then you want every 2 of your 5 to have the Great Mace, well then this is the kit for you. So it might be great for kind of fleshing out those squads, because you can take them in blocks of 5 up to a max of 20. I think they're 20 points each. I'm pretty sure they're 20 points each, but you get a discount if you take the full block of 20 by a little bit. I think they go down like 5 points each. So I think that's the math on them. Double check it for me, leave it in the comments if you are a subject matter expert, of which I am just a novice when it comes to the Stormcast. So they are on the larger 40 mil bases that we've come to expect from them. You're going to get 2 unique sprues here, which are not these 2. They are these 2 right here. And like I said, you are going to get everything you need. I've counted up all the parts. You actually get a whole bunch of different heads. So you can go helmetless, or you can go with a helmet. You've got, you know, some of the open-faced lady helmets. You got closed lady helmets. You got open-faced dude helmets, dudes with facial hair. So, you know, whatever you want, you probably are going to get that look that you're going for out of your Stormcast. Not all heroes wear capes, but they probably have a soul shield, so to speak. So the kit itself, I mean, you know, everything we come to expect from a Stormcast, from a Sigmarine, whatever you want to call them, it's all here. We've seen this ad nauseum over the past 3 years. I do like, when you start looking at the instructions, I do like that they are basically super multi-part, where maybe a little bit redundant in their multi-partness, because a lot of them, you've got a left and front and back top half, a front and back bottom half, and it just really can start to get redundant. But that's what's really cool about the posing and having the flowing capes and everything, which I definitely like as well. So follow all the instructions. Don't clip any parts off the sprue until you know exactly what you're going for, as far as, you know, these models go right there, because they will throw you for a loop really quick these days with the way they design all of this stuff. Aventus Firestrike, the Magister of Hammerhall. Sigmar's been busy. He's been opening chambers. We got this guy now. The Order has some really interesting kind of kits to it, and obviously the Stormcasts are no different. This actually makes 2 different kits, believe it or not. So you get Aventus on a Talaran, or a Lord Arcanum on Talaran. Either way, you can make somebody on foot as well out of this kit. Completely separate and really neat. that they do it that way. The torsos are actually additional to what comes in the kit, so it's kind of like that bonus like we saw with like the Magma Droth, I think it was, for the Fire Slayers. Very similar in composition. Now it is $115. This is a little bit more than a Magma Droth because that was $85. It's an interesting little kit in and of itself. It's, you know, one of those collector things that you get it. This, just like the Black Coach, is more of a and it's got that little collector box thing too, with the double box inside the box here. I don't want to sell it short. If you're gonna spend the money on this model, it's definitely very neat in its out-of-boxing experience. You got a really nice kind of backdrop right there with some more stuff here about Aventus. I haven't read all the fluff yet for the new. There's three news in there for the Stormcast. The new Stormcast, but I'm sure I will be getting up to that here shortly. It's only 2 sprues that's going to come in here with a 100mm round and a 40mm standard Stormcast size right there. As far as that goes, we'll look at that, the box or the models itself here in a second. As far as the manual goes, and I want to talk about this guy because he's actually pretty neat rules wise, and I know the ETB kit that came out last week, which we didn't cover, and I apologize for that. We just had a lot of irons in the fire this month, and so we're picking and choosing what we're covering. But to cover these, it was probably a little bit better on the importance scale overall in the release. Like, I like this whole like scenic thing that we're seeing with Marathi as well. Now we got this whole like kind of chamber militant kind of build up or a piece of terrain, you know, kind of wreck terrain here. We saw it with the ETB kits last week. Really neat stuff there. The Toleron goes together. You know, it's got a lot of multi-part slices that we've come to expect, and the tail and stuff. You're gonna probably want to use some of that Vallejo plastic putty to make sure you get in there for all those gaps and everything, and then, you know, pull it smooth. If you haven't seen that yet, I don't think I have in. It comes in. Oh, here it is. Comes in a little toothpaste tube. You can get it from a lot of retailers, including Miniature Market. I think it's like $5-6. Stuff is money. It dries pretty quick, and then it'll form. It's actually made, I think, with some sort of rock, perhaps marble at some aggregate level, that really hardens. It's everything liquid green stuff wishes it was. Trust me, this stuff will change your life. It'll change your modeling life. Make sure you get some for stuff like this with all these crazy slivers in it and all those capes and crazy stuff out there. And then you figure out which guy you want to put on here. There's Aventus, but you could also switch it up and do the Magister bits, or the Lord Arcanum bits as well. It just depends on what torso you want to put on there and such, right? And then, of course, you can build them separate, or you can switch it and give them the staff. Whatever you want to do, it's pretty neat. So, as far as rules go, there are 2 different sets of rules. Well, actually, I guess there's technically 3 because the Lord. Well, we already have the Lord Arcanum. There is a Lord Arcanum on the Toleron too that you can take for 360 points. But as far as Aventus goes, this guy's good. He's not like a beat stick. He's not like, you know, let me just wade in and do all this stuff. Although he could, because he does, you know, have some offensive capability. I mean, his offensive attacks, you're going to have 8 total attacks. Anytime you hit on 3s, wound on 3s is good. With a -1 Ren, that's average, you know, but still very good. D3 damage and 2 damage is what you really need to take note of. But the stuff he does and the stuff he buffs his army, like if a model dies, you get it back with 1 wound, like a friendly Stormcast Eternal. That's just insanely good. It can't do it to himself, but he can handle 1 wound allocated to a model each hero phase, himself each turn. He's got the Spirit Flask, so he's going to break those all over his face, wade in, and do D3 mortal wounds with this stuff if they're more than 10 models. He's got this strike as well that's really interesting. So it's kind of like an impact hit when he rolls in, like the Beastclaw Raiders do on a 2-up, does a mortal wound to each unit within 1 inch. So you can game that, of course. The fact that whenever he takes a wound on a 5-up, the attacking unit takes a mortal wound as well. It's pretty insane. Haven't seen that a lot out there, more in the newer mechanics, but that's pretty ridiculous. At 10 wounds, he's got to have something to try to like keep him in the fight. He, like I said, he's not a bruiser, he's a buffer. And another way he does that too is anything he flies over, they're going to get -1 to hit. With add 1 to hit rolls for all the Stormcast Eternals. So you pick a unit that he flies over, and it's, you know, 14-inch move ain't nothing to sneeze at. It's probably going to happen. On a 100mm base, he's just going to have to find a spot to land, of course. But then your backline is going to be able to shoot him. And Stormcast shooting definitely got better with all these new shooting units. Lord Arcanum does kind of the same things. You know, he can do all these blast, apply electrids, so he's going to do D3 mortal wounds if you get off the Arcane Bolt, which is pretty cool. Also the command ability, adding 1 to wound is just so huge in this game. It's really good, and just being able to throw that out within 12 inches is just ridiculous. So make sure you load up on your battalions and get your command points there. As far as that goes, moving endless spells here for the Lord Arcanum. Obviously, there's some play there with a lot of combos. He's got the Spirit Flask, although he's a little bit less tankier than this dude over here, which really isn't a tank either. There's other things in the army to do that for these guys here. So overall, I think they're a buffer, definitely worth taking, and considering at 360 points for Adventus or 340 points for Lord Arcanum on the same thing. Well, I think we all know there are definitely some builds there and some play there for sure. Now, here's the 2 sprues. Again, it's just 2 sprues. You've got all your terrain and everything up here. And wings are very impressive, of course. You got your choice of capes, like I said, depending on which guy you want to do or assemble. And then you've got your 2 different staffs. He reminds me a lot of Teclis with this staff. So I can't wait to see what they do when they reboot the High Elves too. Your different torsos and such, and then the tolerance front as well. All that stuff there. I mean, all the detail you come to expect. But remember, this is all computer slices and stuff, so you're definitely going to want to look into getting some of that plastic putty so you don't have all these weird gaps and stuff. GW for the most part has been able to hide those, and they do a really good job of it, but sometimes with these big flat areas on tails and stuff, it's really going to show through. And we saw that with Morathi too. There's definitely some opportunity there that that you definitely need that putty for, because the stuff just wasn't able to kind of hide itself. It was going to be very obvious. All right, let's jump over to the Nighthaunts. So first up is the Chain Rasp Hordes. This unit, everybody kind of, regardless if they play the Nighthaunt faction, seems to be losing their mind about, because just the fact that it's $40 for these guys and they're ETB, and this is the only way to get them outside of the Soul Wars box. And you get 2 of these in the Soul Wars box, right? So it's like, man, the Soul Wars box is so much value because of the fact that you get 2 of these. That's $80. You get the rule book, which is $60. That's $140. The Soul Wars box is only $160, so it's $20 for everything else in there. So, and they're really good. These guys, they just keep coming back. They keep coming back. You got to punk them down. They're like the shock troops that just don't never die. We covered this ad nauseum in the Soul Wars box. They're great models. They go together in a snap, and they're very usable in the game, provided that you have the slotted bases and you just have the models in general. I don't know why these didn't come in a little baggy, but they just kind of threw them in there, like kind of as an afterthought, which is a little off-putting, to be quite honest. I feel like people are already on edge about buying these things, and you just slap some bases in there. It's not that great of an out-of-box experience, but again, I feel like smart money is just pick up the Soul Wars box if you really need some Chain Rasp Hordes. You know what I'm saying? And this is the model. Black Coach, this is the model that's gonna, if any model gets me in the Nighthaunts, this is gonna be the model right here. Because let me tell you a story about little Robbie B. Well, not really little, because I don't know, like 20-ish year old Robbie B back in the late 90s, 97, 98, when the Black Coach came out. I was like, man, that's really cool. And there was this whole split where right around that same time, Undead split into Tomb Kings and Vampire accounts. And I forget exactly when the Black Coach itself came out. But right around then, I was like really into Undead. I really wanted to play these. Long story short, it was just too expensive because all this stuff was metal back then, and it was very hard to get the armies together. And the skeleton box themselves, which if you saw them nowadays, you would probably cringe at the sculpts themselves. But it's all we had back then, so it was what we had. You didn't complain about it. But now looking at the skeletons now and the skeletons back then, you're like, what? But Games Workshop's come a long ways, folks, and this model right here is probably one of the prime examples of how far they have come. Because, I mean, if you look it up online, I mean, we've posted it, just night and day. Just complete night and day. This is such an amazing sculpt, and this was the model that back then was like, oh man, have you seen that Black Coach? And now it's like, dog, have you seen that Black Coach? This thing is ridiculous. It was always good, and it was really cool to read the rules and see that the Karen Wraith still is as good as he was way back then 20 years ago, because that thing was feared on the tabletop. So let's open it up. Let's take a look. Like I said, it comes in a little collector box too, just like the other guy, Advantis Firestrike, just like the bigger, greater demons we saw, just like Archaon, just like Alariel, all of them out there, and Black Coach tail right there. And then the front, there it is, such a striking little portrait of, this would make just a really cool poster just to have. I really like how Games Workshop's coming strong with all these graphics and such. Now once you open it all up, see, that's a great out-of-box experience right there. So you got the Black Coach instruction manual on the 2 sprues, and then boom, Titan base. This is real. This is happening. This thing's gonna be big. I hope. Fingers crossed. We're gonna put it together here in a second. Let's go through the manual real quick. So, like I said, it stayed true to its original design. It's got the Karen Wraith on the front. It's got the casket in the back. I actually forget whether you could open the casket. I think it was hollow underneath because it was pewter. I don't think you could open the casket back then. Assembly-wise, it seems pretty straightforward. You know, you're just putting together basically a carriage, and then there's, you know, a coffin on it, and there's a whole like kind of superstructure around it. But then it takes a turn for the crazy, and you've got some flying skeletons here, which you got your typical left and right. And it looks like, for the most part, the seams are going to be right down the middle, so you are going to need that plastic putty again. And then you've got your yoke kind of locking into there. And then once you get that together, you start adding all the flames and the crazy effects. And this is the support that's actually going to attach the coach to the base here. And then you've got all the spectral things that are going to launch the horses, like kind of like it's doing that whole like swoopy, you know, like Santa does with a sleigh. You know, he comes in for a landing, but then he bumps, and then he like pops back up, and then he lands again or something. You know, you always see that in the commercials and the Tim Allen movies and stuff. And that's kind of how I imagine this is happening, because it doesn't fly, but it's just kind of like bounding along the ground, right? Kind of doing that thing. And then the Karen Wraith is actually posable, and I kind of don't like the 2 poses that G-Dub shows. Like the build I'm going to do is going to have the little hooded executioner hood, because that's the kind of type of person that's going to be, you know, a wraith basically, and then the scythe up here. So I think that's kind of the build I'm gonna do. And then you've got the little specters here. Like, I don't know, maybe they were like part of this necromancer, this vampire's court, you know, back in the day. Maybe this is, you know, carrying his like magic book, and he's got a sword, and I don't know exactly what these are, but they seem to be pretty good in combat. Then you got some waymarker tombstones and such. Again, just like Firestrike, this guy, he definitely adds, well, it does a lot of things. So he is good in combat. I mean, anytime you 3 to hit, 3 to wound, take notice of that. But now you have a missile weapon that's neg3 Ren, D3 damage. Oof, respectable. Then the same exact attack here in combat, but only one, 3/3, neg3, D3. Kind of crazy. Reaper Scythe doing work at 4s to hit, but there's ways to get around that. You can reroll failed attacks with the Reaper Scythe. If the target unit has 5 or more models, obviously it's a sweeping attack at that point, right? That makes sense. Also, if you roll 6s to hit with some of these, you're going to do extra mortal wounds. The spectral claws from the relic bearers that are bringing along that necromancer stuff, or that powerful vampire stuff, are going to get attacks too that could result in mortal wounds. So overall, it's not too shabby. It's got good movement. I'm going to have a lot of attacks here. 8 attacks, 9 attacks, 13 attacks total going in with 12 wounds. It's 360 points, I want to say. I'm pretty sure it's 360 points. Obviously, it went up over previous. It's going to have that ethereal ability, so ignoring Rens. Very easy to heal wounds on stuff in the Night Haunt's army for sure. No lookout surge for this bad boy here. But it also has this whole evocation of death, where it's going to gain all these abilities here. And there's some pretty stout ones right here. It can retreat and charge in the same turn. Pretty crazy. Healing D3 wounds to this at the 4th level, which would be the 4th turn after each battle round if it goes the full time. And by that point, you're probably going to be stuck in. So doing D3 mortal wounds on a 4 up for everybody around it would be pretty strong. So it's just kind of like this battering ram that just like kind of hunkers down the center, or take two, and it hunkers down both flanks and just kind of comes in and smashes and does things, and it can just disrupt everything while the rest of your army is just kind of moving up. At least that's how it reads to me here for the most part. It's not going to have like huge buff ability, but it's just going to kind of like do stuff for you and be a threat on the tabletop. Now, it's the heavy hitter for the army for sure. I feel like where everything else just kind of shambles about and does undead things. So we're gonna cut it here. Let's show you the sprues real quick, because that's important. But more important, I'm just really stoked to get this to get this put together. So 2 big sprues. Of course, you can see that there is some sort of duder inside of it, whether he's a necromancer or a vampire of unknown power. Chained down, perhaps just, you know, getting delivered or serving some sort of penance. I don't know. It's all mysterious. It's all very curious. The model itself seems to be, I mean, if this is the right and left halves of the carriage, and then you're going to add these wheels to it. So it's definitely going to be at least this wide right here. And then, of course, you've got the other parts to it as well. So it seems to be, at first glance, at least kind of beefy. The yoke appears to go down the middle, and then you're going to have your 2 horses and stuff over here. So that definitely looks like it is decent size. It's probably not going to fill up the base, but it's definitely going to have the length, if not the girth, to fit on that base right there. And I mean, everything else looks pretty good design wise. The spokes are very spindly and very well done. The wood has grain detail. You've got very nice little chain details here. The crazy lanterns that are going to be on the top over where the rider or the driver sits, the Karen Wraith, of course. And then all the exposed and partially exposed with the cloth kind of just draping over the rib cages right there is really neat to see as well. So far so good. Loving this right here. I'm gonna get my hands dirty here, work out those hobby muscles, and get this together and come on back and show it to you. Wow, what an incredible build. That kit rocks. So let me, man, I'm really blown away at this whole new Games Workshop design ability, and the way they're just engineering things to fit together is amazing. Now, a couple of gotchas that you need to be aware of as you're building your black coach. These axles right here, that they just appear to be just a random spoke, those are actually locked in hemispherical shapes that are going to correspond to the specific wheels right here. So you can't mess it up. So when you look at it, those parts do not, these axles do not look like that at the end. So don't be alarmed by that. I was kind of like, wait, did I grab the wrong piece? And I'm like, no, I'm good. Very curious, but it makes sense once you get going. And then another thing that they didn't quite explain that well here that I want to make you visually aware of is this little piece of flame, of ethereal flame right here. First off, when you get all of the wheels and stuff attached together, they actually canter a little bit. This is to kind of lend to that whole bouncing, careening kind of type deal. So this is actually going to kind of pull to the right, but then the whole assembly, and you can kind of see it here in this picture, actually tilts. It's actually just slightly cantered a little bit, and that's actually going to line up with this whole like coach assembly here, these workhorses. So it's actually tilted to the other side of the picture right here, and also kind of twisted with its axles. So that's just kind of that's kind of the thing you got to keep in mind. Now, the really cool thing about this, and you're going to want to build it in stages and not glue it together, because the big key here is, and I used a little bit of poster tack to kind of try to hold all of this stuff together here, is this is its own assembly. The yoke or whatever that thing is, I guess the yokes are the things that go, I had to go back to my Oregon Trail, the yokes are actually the things across here. So these are actually pushed into the horses, so the horses can be removed. This whole long assembly here can actually be removed from the yoke and the harness or the axle or whatever this thing is that runs longitudinally down this whole point right here. So these guys can all be painted separate in their glowy colors, and then this whole like center chariot kind of piece can be painted in the blacks or whatever it is. I forget exactly, right? And then it's going to line up right here and actually lock into place. And it doesn't lock all the way down flush right there at that joint if you look at the model itself. So just kind of some gotchas right there. And then this piece here, I actually glued it all down. This guy is removable. He's just held in with poster tack too. So it's starting, because I'm holding it, starting to kind of cantor. But if you assemble it in these assemblies here, then you'll be able to go back and kind of paint it, whether you're going to airbrush it or paint it separately. It's a lot easier to work in sections than it is if you kind of glued it all down. Now, another thing to keep in mind too is don't glue the coffin in right here. You can actually keep the coffin separate, and the coffin's really neat. So it's got this little deuter inside of it that appears to have some sort of shroud, and he's locked into place, and there's some sort of crazy like torture mask or something, or I don't know, maybe that's some sort of tribute. I'm not exactly sure. GW painted it like he had a blood stain right there where his heart would go. So kind of, hey, maybe this guy was a vampire. And it's got this little piece right here, and they got notches, and they got, you know, they've got a little triangle, and they've got a little semicircle. So you know how it goes into this right here, and you can actually just kind of place it in, and then it sockets itself right in. So you can paint it separately and then put it in there. And if you leave the roof off, the roof can actually be its own assembly too, with all of your little ghost relic Baer deuters, right? And these guys, there's a little piece of the roof that holds them together, which you can see right there, that I just kind of blue tacked into place just to keep it so they can be pulled off and painted separately. And then this guy just slots right in. So that one's way easier. And then this whole thing actually just goes right on top here. If you don't glue it down, you'll save yourself a lot of time and effort, and boom goes the dynamite. You have a completed black coach, which, well, there it goes. But you can see the blue tack. I tried to hold it into place. So you could still play with it while you're still painting it up and such, but I think this is probably the best way to kind of keep it all separate, and also allow you to kind of play with it and get it all painted up in sections, you know. But right here, you're gonna have to glue these pieces in. So all of this ghost flame and stuff here, you're just gonna kind of have to either paint by hand, or if you're gonna airbrush it, you're gonna have to kind of work some of those and be very careful of your overspray onto the coach itself. Now, another thing to be aware of is there's a lot of gaps along the top of these spectral horses, and down the back of the Cairn Wraith, and down the backs right here. So you could either use really thin super glue like this Tamiya stuff that we favor, really thin cement, or again, the Vallejo plastic putty will really help out with that a whole lot. Getting down in there, just give it time to dry and then scrape it all away. But overall, this kit is very exciting and really shows what Games Workshop can do with all that really cool studio design team. I think, you know, they said in their new financials, it's a bunch of folks that really work hard on this stuff, and you can definitely see where it shows right down to every option on these models, and also just the way it goes together, and the detail and the really thought process on how to make and hide as much of the mold lines and the seams and everything as possible. So I'm really digging this new Games Workshop and all of you know, these design processes on kind of everything just really kind of coming together on this big Age of Sigmar 2.0 release. So I'm really stoked. Again, this was going to be the model that, if any of them got me into playing in Night Haunts, it would be this one. But I'm not sure quite yet. I want to see how they do on the tabletop and see if I kind of feel them from there, because I kind of feel like they play like Space Marines a little bit. Not that that's a bad thing, but maybe it's not so good for Age of Sigmar. I don't know. Still on the fence. I don't want to make a snap call quite yet, but I'm really digging this model. 20 years later, it's amazing what we can do with a little 3D computer design and processes, so to speak, there. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed our review and unboxing of all of the new Wave 4 Age of Sigmar miniatures, including our build of the famous, or perhaps infamous, black coach. If you like these kind of features here on the channel, make sure you subscribe to us. Turn on notifications so you can be the very first to like and comment on all these videos.